Welcome to the first episode of Odd Hour, where I talk about mysteries, weird stories, and the little known for any amount of time less than an hour. I'm Isaiah Ephraim. I use he, him, or they, them pronouns. I hope you'll enjoy this new podcast, as I have never done one before, but I am excited to get started. For the first episode of the podcast, I'm going to take you through the story of a mysterious disappearance of a man in an airport. No, I'm not talking about Lars and Tank. This is a different man in a different airport. If you know anything about the internet, it's that it loves a good story, whether it be real or fake. And today's story is one that has confused many who have heard it, and it has caused internet sleuths to take matters into their own hands to decode the mysteries. It is a mystery, but it has also been potentially solved. Who knows? Maybe this podcast will one day open the eyes of somebody who has never heard of a mystery before, and can potentially solve ones that have gone cold. But that's a story for another day. The story today is The Man from Taured. We have a very interesting one today. It has been featured on many conspiracy theory videos, and perhaps a deep dive will clear things up, or make them even more blurry. Who knows? All I know is that research for this particular mystery absolutely captivated me. Our story begins in Tokyo, at Haneda Airport, which is now called Tokyo International Airport. It is a hot, stifling July day in 1954, and the airport is filled with tourists coming to or leaving vacations, families greeting each other in baggage claim after time spent apart, employees moving gate to gate, directing passengers to their designated spots. The clicking of feet on floor, the rolling of suitcases, and the mild din of a crowd of talking people can be heard, and that peculiar scent that can only be found in airports permeates the air. There is a haze in the distance when looking out from the floor-to-ceiling length windows, the refraction effect of the tarmac causing a watery effect to be seen. One man would come to stand out among the throng of people entering and leaving the airport. Witnesses and storytellers describe this man as being Caucasian, speaking with a French accent and sporting a dark beard. He enters the customs line. He's also described as speaking Japanese and, quote, many other languages as well. Upon reaching the front of the line, the man is asked to present his passport, to which he quickly obliges. There is nothing out of the ordinary about the man's behavior. He is not described as having a shifty demeanor, just a man visiting Japan for the third time from his home country. He is a businessman. He has work to do. It isn't long before he notices that the immigration officer is looking strangely between him and the passport, a confused look on his face. The passport is not one the officer has ever seen before, and when opened, it lists a country that does not exist. Taured, spelled T-A-U-R-E-D. When the man is questioned, he is confident that both his passport is correct, and recites the name Taured back to the officer. He is in Tokyo for business for a company with a headquarters in Japan. Other passengers around him do not recognize the name Taured. Indignantly, the man explains that Taured is in fact real, located on the border between France and Spain, and that it has been established for over 1,000 years. His license, too, lists Taured as the man's country of origin. This explanation does not satisfy the customs officers. Out of concern for national safety, and safety for the various other passengers in the airport, the immigration officers detain the man and guide him off to a side room where they begin to interrogate him. When given a map, the man immediately points to the border area between Spain and France, which is Andorra, explaining that that was where Taured was, but he was confused that Taured was not on the map, and why it was called Andorra. Upon further investigation of his luggage, the officers found that the man also possessed currencies from a multitude of countries. The man continued to describe the company he worked for, and the hotel that he had a reservation at, to which the officers found that the company only existed in Tokyo with no mention of Taured, and the hotel too existed, but had no mention of a reservation under the man's name. The man's detention only caused more questions than answers, and so the officers arrested the man, and supposedly housed him under lock and key at a nearby hotel, with the intention of solving the confusion in the morning. Police officers seized all of this documentation, and security would be stationed outside the room until the following day. 2 armed guards were posted to the only entrance and exit, and everyone settled in after a long day of confusion and chaos. The 2 guards did not leave their posts, and the man remained inside the hotel room for the entirety of the night. The night passed easily with no interactions between the two guards and the man inside the room. The officers who had been investigating throughout the night returned to the hotel the next morning and greeted the two guards at the door. With no conflict in the middle of the night, they knocked on the door to no reply. Maybe the man inside was still sleeping, and so they knocked again, and then again, and still, there was no reply. Frustrated, the officers forced in the door to the hotel room to find absolutely no one inside. The bed looked as if it had not been slept in, and the bathroom had not been used. There were no sign of the man's luggage, and mysteriously, the documents seized by the police the previous day disappeared along with the man. There was no sign of any struggle within the hotel room, nor was there an indication of the escape he took. His room was high up in the multi-story hotel, and it did not have a balcony, so the only possible way he could have escaped would be through the window, but the fall would have killed him. Any evidence that the man had existed was gone. He had simply disappeared under their noses. What happened to the man from Taured? Did he fall to his death, or was injured in the fall and died in a secluded spot? Did he return to his imaginary Taured, never to be seen again? Did he actually exist at all? Maybe he was actually an alien, or a time traveler, or some supernatural creature existing under the guise of a man. I hope you have your tinfoil hats ready. The popular theory is that the man actually existed and was from a place called Taured, but that he and his country were from an alternate dimension. He had stated that he had been to Japan and many other countries multiple times, and had currency from about as many. Perhaps on a plane ride from Taured to Japan, the man and the plane encountered an interdimensional portal. The Earth he would have entered would have been a copy, where little things changed. Taured no longer existed, but he had memories and physical evidence of the other world. Maybe in his hotel room, the Earth he was currently in could not hold such a potent energy source that did not belong here, and took him back to his own universe. Another theory is that the man was a time traveler who went too far back in time to when Taured had not yet been formed or unified. It would explain his knowledge of the world and geography, and also why he pointed to Andorra, claiming it as Taured. When he was caught, he went along with what the investigators asked of him, sticking to his story that Taured was real. In his hotel room, it would have been the first time all day after being detained that there would be no physical eyes on him, despite the guards stationed right outside his room. He could have taken that only chance at being alone to time travel back to his correct time and go on his merry way. Another theory is that this story is true, but is highly embellished and changed as it is retold, like a preternatural game of telephone. Definitely not as exciting as other theories, but a theory nonetheless. Maybe it was a misprint on the passport, but how would that explain the man's insistence that the country was real? Maybe it was a very long joke, a prank, but what would be the point? The end goal? There just isn't one. The final theory is perhaps the most accurate, and unfortunately the most unfulfilling. It was all a hoax. The first writings about the man from Taured appeared in a book by Colin Wilson in the 1980s. Before then, there was no documentation, no sources, no evidence that this incident ever occurred. Colin Wilson was a writer and philosopher who specialized in true crime and the paranormal. His writings about the Taured mystery appeared in his book entitled The Directory of Possibilities in 1981. This is the earliest source of the story. The lack of sources surrounding such a sensational story is telling in and of itself. Think about it. If a man entered an airport with a passport from a fake country, was detained by police, and disappeared without a trace the next day, it would have been on the news immediately. And yet the first reports about the story came over 25 years after it had supposedly happened. Unfortunately, while the story itself is absolutely intriguing, it appears to be a complete hoax. But how real is the possibility of something like this happening? In other words, could parallel universes actually exist and cause something like this to happen? The concept of parallel universes most definitely predates the Taured mystery. It is one that physicists have researched into worlds over in the hopes to discover evidence of such an elusive dimension. 2020 was a year that saw parallel universes enter the headlines multiple times, with NASA at one point stating that they may have found evidence of a parallel universe where time runs backwards. This was not actually the case. Scientists working on the case, quote, found evidence of a fundamental particle that defy our current understanding of physics. More research is needed to know for sure. One of the scientists who has worked on the project has floated the parallel universe idea as a possible theory to explain it. but there's no hard evidence for this yet, unquote. This does open up more possibilities related to the potential existence of parallel universes. In the previously mentioned study, what was discovered was that neutrinos were flowing in a direction opposite to their natural course, quote, in the same direction of a beam that would rain down and reflect off the surface of the ice. High-energy neutrinos would experience more of a hard stop and not erupt from the ice, unquote. It is a subject I am not entirely literate in, as science has never been my forte in terms of understanding it. From what I can see, this bizarre nature that the neutrinos displayed opens up the possibility that perhaps other elements on Earth can react in ways that have never been conceived of before. The theories about parallel universes as put forth by physicist Brian Greene are some of the most interesting put forward in recent years. He believes that the universe is both finite and infinitely big, and in order for both to work with each other without being mutually exclusive, are parallel universes as a solution. He sees the world through string theory, as he has studied quantum physics for nearly 25 years, and explains that string theory isn't just strings, but also objects that can fit through the strings, two-dimensional shapes, and it could be that Earth and our universe reside on one object, passing through multiple other strings. He further explains how evidence can be gathered of parallel universes. If we are living on one of these giant membranes, then the following can happen. When you slam particles together, which is what happens at the LHC, some debris from these collisions can be ejected off of our membrane and be ejected into the greater cosmos in which our membrane floats, he says. If that happens, that debris will take away some energy. So if we measure the amount of energy just before the protons collide and compare it with the amount of energy just after they collide, if there's a little less after, and it's less in just the right way, it would indicate that some had flown off, indicating that this membrane picture is correct. The possibilities of the universe are literally endless. Who knows if the strings and neutrinos have aligned in just the right way to make the world infinite. The final segment we're talking about today is this inherent endlessness of the universe, and all that can be hidden by infinity. And that is the possibility of a planet in our solar system that scientists believe is just past Pluto, but is virtually undetectable. As early as 2016, scientists began gathering evidence of a, quote, Neptune-sized planet past the outskirts of Pluto. This early study postulated that the planet orbits the Sun every 15,000 years, and may have fallen out of the, quote, planet-forming region near the Sun, due to the other planets causing a tug-of-war, and slowed down by gas, the planet settled in a distant elliptical orbit where it still lurks today. This mystery planet is often given the title Planet X, and it is believed that further evidence for the planet's existence can be gathered through observation of objects pulled in by its gravitational pull. 2 years later, in 2018, more information emerged about the hidden planet through descriptions of the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt is incredibly cold. It contains icy debris, and several planets reside near this belt, with Neptune and Pluto being the two farthest out. As astronomers sought to create a computer simulation that could recreate the orbits, physics, and planetary alignments, after all the specifications were entered to help recreate the natural course of the planets, they found that that natural course occurred only around 1% of the time, with 99% finding Jupiter or Neptune being flung far from its orbit in the solar system to the point where it would not rejoin. A potential extra planet could be a solution to why this situation does not occur. As the Kuiper Belt is filled with debris, one theory is that this debris came together and was gradually ground together until it formed something like a planet, forming its own orbit and gravitational pull. Astronomers further reasoned that, quote, the supposed planet on its way out of the solar system would have messed up a part of the Kuiper Belt known as the cold classical belt. If the Kuiper Belt were a donut, the cold classical belt would be the chocolate filling. A passing planet would have stirred up those orbits. But this simulation that seemed to create new solar system possibilities found that a planet leaving the solar system, as seen through the example of Jupiter or Neptune, actually would not have destroyed the belt. As of 2018, it was mostly circumstantial evidence as provided and theorized by the computer simulation. But, quote, these observations show that there are more free-floating Jupiter-sized planets in the galaxy than there are stars. As years went on and scientists were able to gather more information about this hypothetical Planet X, they may have discovered math-grounded evidence of the planet's existence. In 2019, the same astronomers on the previous 2018 study found that the mystery planet may have a mass of, quote, about 10 times that of Earth, and may be similar in size to Uranus or Neptune. And its predicted orbit is about 20 times farther out from our Sun on average than Neptune. While the planet as of 2019 was still not technically discovered, further evidence was gathered based on astronomers' observations. Through analyzing the orbits of the planets that reside in the Kuiper Belt, which tend to cluster together along with other smaller objects, may be affected by the gravity of another planet. 2020 introduced other explanations for the discrepancies found back in 2015 and 2016. With the addition of more computer simulations, the hypothesis of a full asteroid belt could be the solution to evidence that may have originally pointed to the existence of another planet. Called KBOs, or Kuiper Belt objects, they are, quote, leftover small bits of planetary material that were never incorporated into planets, which are incredibly similar to those objects found within asteroid belts. Because the Kuiper Belt is so far from the Sun, and its orbits are much slower than those in the upper planetary system, KBOs are incredibly hard to detect and will naturally stay away from the Sun. In short, their orbits are incredibly hard to detect. While there is no evidence of a cluster of these KBOs, a handful have been tracked by scientists in order to study their orbits. As scientists state, quote, these simulations predict that there should be many KBOs with pericenters as large as the outliers, but also many KBOs with smaller pericenters, which should be much easier to detect. Why don't the orbit discoveries match the predictions? The answer may be that the Planet 9 theory does not hold up to detailed observations. While it may be disappointing to hear that there may indeed be no Planet 9, the very fact that new discoveries are being publicized frequently is cause for excitement. The universe is never as it seems, and with it constantly changing and knowledge constantly updated, our understanding of the world we live in continues to grow and expand, allowing for more solutions to be broached to hypothesized questions. From a man who may or may not have traveled from a different universe to an airport in Tokyo, to the potential of parallel universes, to the possibility of a change to our solar system, the unknowable about the universe is always ever present. While it will never be possible to fully understand the intricacies of the universe and its ever-expanding boundaries, it will never not be intriguing to learn of the wonders and mysteries of the universe and ruminate over their origins and objectives. But when we look up at the sky, all humans on Earth have looked up at the same one and have asked themselves the same questions. And who knows, maybe something far out there in the universe has been looking down and doing the same. Thank you so much for joining me for this first episode of Odd Hour. If you enjoyed, maybe think about giving me a quick rating and review. That would help me a lot. I intend to put out about 2 podcasts a month, but I hope you can be lenient with me. I graduate in the spring, but still want to talk about cool things every once in a while. If you know of any stories you want to hear an episode for, email me at irdwriting@gmail.com and let me know. You can find all sources for this episode in the description, along with an episode transcript. Intro music for this episode is Mysterious Strange Things by Young Logos. Narration music by Patrick Patricos. Check them out on YouTube. You can also follow me at HeyNancyBoy on Twitter and OOPierre on Tumblr. I'm Isaiah Ephraim. Stay weird, and join me again soon for more mysteries, weird stories, and all things living.